Spitzke, welcome to the Rest of Us podcast.
Thanks for having me, Noah.
Yep. Excited to talk to you today. You're a pretty young entrepreneur, so it's right in the ballpark of, the target audience of the podcast. So I'm excited to hear your story and your entrepreneurship journey. But before we get to that part, I'll just have you introduce yourself and your business.
Sure. So I own and operate Spitz Solutions. It is a public relations firm. The main value proposition and actually what we do is we help top 1% entrepreneurs gain credibility, stand out, differentiate themselves by putting their message in front of publications, TV networks like Forbes, Fox, NBC, ones like those.
Yeah. So let's just kind of jump right into your story of how you got started in entrepreneurship, how you got started with your business, and where kind of the entrepreneurship drive came from.
Yeah, sure. So going back into how I started my business during COVID, I knew I was decently different from the average kid throughout school. Growing up, I had worked pretty independently. That made it so I graduated about 18 months before I was supposed to on paper. From there, during COVID, I kind of got indoctrinated with various people on TikTok. I turned into trading stocks. I kind of realized I was kind of poor though. So I didn't have enough money. I asked the guy who owned the program what I should do. He said, "Oh, follow this guy, start like a cash flowing business." So I did that. I bought another program at the time, and the only reason why I bought that was because that guy convinced me very well of his status. He kind of sold me on the dream, which looking back in retrospect was kind of a bad move, but I was sold by it. And one of the things that made me buy it was his PR and his social proof. So I figured, why don't I help other entrepreneurs and other business owners do that exact same thing so they can help people like me or their ideal clients buy their services?
So you kind of saw, instead of actually doing, the program he was selling, you saw kind of why his program worked so well or why he got the traction of it, and you wanted to kind of replicate that and help other entrepreneurs get the attention of their other, businesses and products.
Yeah, exactly. And he was offering a few different services. Like there were a few people in the group that were already placing people on podcasts and things like that. But a lot of people in that group were running like lead gen or Facebook ads or LinkedIn outreach or SEO or things like that. And you don't see a ton of people running PR firms.
So you decided that was kind of your route. What was, I mean, you kind of talked about how like you didn't really see a lot of people doing it, but what kind of attracted you to the PR side of it as opposed to, the lead gen, the Facebook, the SEO, the things like that?
Yeah, PR is a very yes or no type offer. Well, I view PR as kind of two phases. The first thing is, do you actually get someone placed? Yes or no. So for a beginner, it's a very easy way to make what I call a very risk-free offer. So when I used to start, I would just do a pay on completion. That was basically where a business owner would pay me a percent upfront. I would get paid once it came out. Obviously, that I grew away from that because there are logistical issues, but the second aspect that I noticed was important to help was to make sure that their actual message, if it's a business to business focus, that the actual message goes into the right consumers and that it helps converts their message and helps them amplify what they're already doing. There is some other components I've learned in the last couple of weeks and months in terms of actually marketing everything to make sure that every client gets as much reach as possible, basically goes viral in that sense. But from that perspective, it was a really 0 to 1. It was a pretty easy business model for me to start, but to master it, it's taken a lot of time and a lot of practice.
Yeah, I remember in our the pre-call we did for this podcast, there were some things that you kind of learned as you went of like, this is going to be a lot harder than I thought it would be, or these are things that I didn't really realize would be challenges of the business. But as I went, I realized these challenges. What were some of the things early on that you thought weren't going to be challenges, but became challenges in the future?
Yeah, so the first 3, 4 months of my business, I drastically underestimated the amount of volume and the amount of effort it would take to land a client. In retrospect, I would have gone about it a completely different way and volume would not have mattered. But in terms of reaching out to business owners, trying to find who would be a match for my services, I was only sending like 20 outreaches a day, not getting a ton of traction. Combine that with not being too great at sales. And it took a long time to acquire the first client. Now it's basically, and PR, it's the same thing for fulfillment. I'm reaching out to journalists, reaching out to people like yourself to see if they're a match for what my client has to offer, everything alongside that. So as I got better and better, I kind of fell into a rabbit hole of, well, actually learning how to cold email people, learning how to attract attention, kind of distract people from an already busy day they're on. So I would say that's the biggest skill that I've learned and easily the most translatable across my business because I do it for client acquisition, fulfillment, partnerships, virtually everything. But that's really what I've learned on my end.
Yeah, I think when business owners start, maybe they're really skilled in the thing that they do, but actually getting people to pay you for your services is a lot more difficult than maybe you think, because you might say like, I have a great service, but if nobody knows who you are, if nobody has seen your work, if you're not able to market yourself and sell yourself or your services, nobody's really has a reason to use you. And I kind of found that too when I was starting my business. I would just kind of walk in and be like, hey, I'm a real estate photographer. You're a real estate agent. Why wouldn't you need photography? But there's so much else that goes into it of, can I trust you? Do you do good work? I already have a guy. Why would I even use you type thing? So when you start a business, it's so much more than just selling a product. It's building trust, networking, growing your business, finding clients, finding that first client to refer you to the next client, and all of that kind of thing. So it's a lot more involved than you may think it will be in the start.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing too, I'm sure you saw this, is positioning, right? Like I've seen people with the skill you have, which I don't want to dumb it down to taking photos, but for the sake of this conversation, I will, like photography, for
Yeah.
example. I've seen that. I've seen other people like within your space, they take that to photography with drones and they can command a much higher price. Or for instance, photography for lawn care companies that are doing commercial projects, they can command a lot more than just people doing drone photography, for instance. So it is finding out how can you position yourself to be the most profitable to grow the quickest in your business. And that's really what we're evolving to as myself and our team members get better at identifying what actually is, well, what's actually going to impact the business owners that we work with and their businesses to actually help them generate as much money as possible. That can even be shifting up who they're working with, their target offer, anything to basically put more meat and potatoes on the plate.
Yeah, I think when you're starting out, you kind of think, like for me, it's like real estate photography in general, or just photography in general. I can do any type of photography. I can do, real estate. I can do weddings. I can do headshots. I can do product photography, food photography. Like I do photography. But when you actually say like, I do real estate photography only, I do residential real estate only, or I do commercial only, then you have a niche that you can kind of niche down into and find the people that are actually big players in your market. So like for me, like there's like 5 or 6 realtors that are doing a lot of volume in the area that I would be really interested in working with. So I may like start, either just getting better and trying to get their attention that way, meeting them at events, reaching out to them, or like you said, like lawn care or drone. When you niche down into those areas, you kind of have a better way to spend your time and to market yourself, because when you're just trying to market your general services of photography, video, PR, advertising, marketing, just those general things, anybody can do it, but nobody really knows what that means. So then when you say, I do PR for lawn care firms, or I do advertising for law firms, or whatever, like anything like that, then you finally have, you can get some traction because you're targeting your services, like you said, positioning yourself as a player in that specific market.
Yeah, exactly. And from that same perspective, it is making sure that, well, no one wants to go to the doctor who's on their first surgery. They want to go to the doctor who's on their 1,000th surgery. So
Yeah.
making sure that you appear the exact same way is really the end goal of any type of branding activity in the first place. So like you said, they trust you, they know you, they think you're the best in the space.
Yeah, definitely. When you were kind of building out your firm, was there certain like types of entrepreneurs that you found like were a better niche for you to niche down into, or are you still kind of, you maybe have ones that you like to work with, but you're more general and you can do any type of entrepreneur?
In terms of fulfillment, we can theoretically do any type of entrepreneur. For the most part, though, the two subsets that have seemed to naturally fallen into us, because when we took our approach, I didn't know what would work. I just let the data tell me what would work. So what I'm finding is working is basically the industries that have that personal brand on their own, like the people who get clients because of them, not their companies.
Mhm.
That's a coach or a consultant or maybe like a personal injury attorney, something like that. Recently, we're taking on a lot of coaches and consultants, helping them grow. And the other aspect that I would divide it into, it can be a bit more narrow, is like faster growing companies who are taking a bit of a longer, more direct business to business sales approach and using PR and using branding for them to one, stay top of mind, two, articulate their message properly to the stakeholders, and three, showcase why they are in fact better and different. So it is not exactly the most niched down in the world, which is fine because we have sub niches within those. And as we keep analyzing what's working, we'll continue to niche down further.
I think like niching down is not necessarily for everybody. You know, if you have a product that you can like kind of customize to whatever you need, like for you, like you talked about, like personal injury lawyers. Like if you bring in a personal injury lawyer, maybe your approach to that type of fulfillment is a little bit different, but you can still service everybody. You're just niching down when you actually have that type of client. So I think niching down, it can be good in certain sense, and especially if you know, command the space in the industry, then your time is better spent in that niche that you're already in. But in the beginning, especially like for me, like I'm not in a position to niche down yet, even if I want to, because financially it doesn't make sense. Business wise, it doesn't make sense. Just generally, I can't do it right now. So I think that's generally or what people want to do because it helps you spend your time and grow your skills in a lot more direct way.
Yeah, and I want to put a disclaimer on this just for both of us because if you're doing something that is very hyper specific, you have to change your process for every industry you work with.
Hmm.
Do not listen to what we're saying. I purely went off the calculations of okay, what's going to have to change for my fulfillment process? What's going to have to change for them to actually get results, grow their brand, or make money off of this? And I looked at it and I figured, well, I can group people into specific buckets. And in my marketing messages, sure, I can niche down a bit further if I want to. But I did the math. I would have to 5x, 10x my prices in order to make it worth my while, given our go to market strategy. So I haven't necessarily seen the payoff of doing it yet. Perhaps one day it'll get there, but in terms of growing the quickest, growing the most scalably, this is positioning that's could work for us.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, in the beginning it's a little bit different. Once you kind of get traction and you get maybe like for me, like in the creative business, once you get maybe like 3 or 4 retainer clients that can pay your bills, then and those are consistent, you know, cash flow coming in, then you can maybe think about like, oh, I only want to work with X industry people because it's what you enjoy the people, you only want to do this type of thing because it gives you the most fulfillment in your work, and it helps you. You're the most knowledgeable in that area. So I think it's just kind of it depends on where you're at in your business. I want to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about your business specifically and how you're kind of actually interacting with the clients, the things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So if somebody reaches out to you and says, I want to be on this platform or I want to be in this article, I want to work with just this journalist. So what does that actually look like of like working with a client for you?
Do you mean in terms of what the client experience and what the process is from basically after they've signed the dotted lines and everything?
Yeah, basically just like the onboarding process and actually what working with you looks like.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So what I like to do is obviously for most PR firms, this is pretty common. I do start off with an interview to make sure it is as to the point as possible. I do want all of my clients to fill out a form beforehand so that they can put some thought into their business and then I jump on with them. I want them to articulate on their points. I want to hear their explanations for why they think certain things. I want to challenge them on their beliefs to come up with what I believe and what they believe to be the most compelling story angles about them, and then also relating it to various current events or industry specific topics that are happening throughout the world. From there, we do have pre established connections that we can like leverage and pitch out to, Or if it's something where they want it pitched to various other media campaigns, it is virtually setting up a cold email sequence, sometimes cold calling if we can't grab their email, and figuring out who's going to be the exact match in terms of journalists. What have the journalists written on that's comparatively close to our clients so that we can mention it. The one thing that I want to note is if you're going to pitch yourself to the media, if you're going to pitch yourself to anything, if you are a PR firm, you have to be very careful because most likely if you have a set number of clients, you're going to be pitching the same contacts multiple times a month. I write for Entrepreneur. I get about 5 to 10 emails from the exact same firm every month. I hit spam on all of them because hell, they haven't mentioned anything that I've done. Right. And a lot of journalists share this mindset because they get hit up 10 to 100 times a day, depending on the publication, depending on the column, and a bunch of other things. So I want to make sure if they're going to pick any email for their column, they're picking mine out of the 10, 100 people in their inbox, right? And this doesn't happen every single time. But by putting more care in, it helps me build out long-term connections with these journalists because they have specific PR firms that they reach out to when they need a story. And I want to be at the top of that list every single time. So I don't even have to pitch. I just want opportunities coming to me, coming to my clients every single time. But to go back and continue what we were talking about, the other aspect is once it is landed, once it is live, I do want to prep my clients for a go-to-market strategy. A lot of this involves making sure that they're basically publicizing themselves. So posting on their socials, posting it to their LinkedIn, sending it out to their email list. Obviously, there is some copywriting involved to make it look like one, you're either very genuine in how you approach it, showing gratitude, mentioning people throughout your career, or if it is a more business focused article, summarizing it, paraphrasing it to showcase how this article actually drops valuable insights to the industry and how it can be used for potential decision makers. You can run various promo campaigns, you can run ads to the post, you can boost your post to generate more reach from your ideal audience, but that's the general frameworks for how we tend to use it. And then we want to make sure our clients integrate it into their marketing and sales cycles as well as much as possible. For instance, for me, I've closed numerous deals from people who are like, well, what the heck have you done? And I go in and I say, okay, so within 2 years of this business being started, we rank top 10 in the world for PR firms and I write for Entrepreneur. And then they're basically thinking, oh, okay, I can see their eyes drop and basically I can go for the close if I want to.
Yeah. So there's a lot to get into there. I want to ask you about you talked about challenging their beliefs a little bit when you're interviewing them and kind of pushing them on some of their ideas. What types of things are you like what is an example of that? And why are you necessarily pushing back on some of their ideas? Is it kind of to prep them for questions they may have in the future? Or is it just to make sure that they're a good fit for your agency?
This is after they've signed in the perspective I was talking about. So most of the times when I'm challenging them on their positioning within the marketplace compared to their competitors, compared to what the market actually needs. For example, this may be a coach consultant who is using one of his services as his main selling point. Let's say custom leadership coaching, for example, and they're catering their services to Fortune 500 executives, right? Maybe another one of their services is group coaching, and perhaps the group coaching is more in demand based on who they're taking on as clients lately, based on what they can price it at, based on what allows for their time of day expenditure. So we want to do the analysis to figure out, okay, who should we write these articles for? We want to write it for one person specifically and one person only. How can we make them resonate with it? And really, how can we make the business flow to basically do the top 20% of their clients, appeal to the top 10% of clients, top 20% of clients that can pay them the best. They have to have the least amount of work in their business so that it's the most scalable as possible. And obviously make it so that they're seen as the most attractive option to those people because they understand it and they're credible enough.
Yeah. Do you have any people that, if you in the coaching example, if they say I really want to push my individual leadership coaching offering because that is what I like to do, that is my best offering in my opinion, and you say hey, group coaching might be a better option here, what is the reaction usually? Is it kind of oh, well, you're the PR expert here, we should go with that? Or do they kind of say no, we really should do this and this is what I want to do?
It depends on the client and what they've done. Obviously, it is a collaboration back and forth. If I can't make them see it from my point of view because they're in their business day to day, I'm just looking at the positioning of the business. If they're seeing something different that they can't either articulate or explain to me, yeah, we'll do it their way. But if I can communicate my value position properly and make them see where I'm coming from and make them realize a hidden gap, then yeah, we're going to do it my way if they're in agreement. So I don't see a point in doing something against the client's wish, but having a thoughtful dialogue, challenging them on their beliefs instead of coming in forcefully and saying, okay, like, no, we need to do this for your business. It's not going to work if we don't do this. That doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in any business, when you're working, especially client facing businesses, there's kind of a fine line of pushing the client on what they should really do because you may be the expert in that area. Like if they hire you for marketing and you're a marketing expert, you may know kind of the better way to do it, but they really want to do like a video isn't a good option for a client. Maybe just writing content is, and but they really want to do video. There's kind of a fine line to walk of like, I mean, we can do video, but the writing content's going to do a lot better for you. And so, yeah, it's because this is a very it's a person to person business. There's a lot of people involved as opposed to business entities involved. And so it's a really fine line of just working with them and trying to balance, balance emotions, balance personalities. Maybe the client isn't a good fit or turns out to not be a good fit, but you're still working with them. So it's a fine line to walk for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that because what I saw when I started working was I'm not afraid to drop a client if it's not working out. I've ran similar offers that were more month to month, and I realized very quickly on that these clients are going to be a pain in my butt. They're going to take up way too much of my time, and overall, I'm just going to not enjoy working with them or working for them. So, making sure that you're not stuck, forced to work with these clients was basically the happiest moment of my life. Like, I don't want to say I enjoy dropping people, but the stress relief you get from dropping someone that is negatively impacting you, that's a feeling you can't replicate, that's for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I've not had to drop a client yet, but I can imagine if it gets to that point where you're considering dropping them, it is kind of it does make a lot of sense that way. So in the beginning, I feel like in the beginning a lot of people are too worried about dropping clients because they're not, they just want to get all the business they can possibly, and they'll deal with it, and it sucks, but we're just gonna do it anyway. Where did you kind of have that mindset of like, I'm just going to push through all the pain. I'm just going to push through all the struggle because this is what I need to do to grow my business? And where was that turn where you were like, okay, I can either afford to drop clients or I just need to drop these clients because it just does not make sense for my day-to-day work?
Yeah, and it took me a while to actually like drop my first client. I don't think this is like dropping clients. Obviously, it's not the greatest world's metric to track a business. It's
Mm-hmm.
basically misalignment. You either didn't grab something properly in the sales process or expectations were not set. I always look at it as what can I do better like next time around, but for instance, their clients can tend to be too micromanagement and they don't back off when you tell them to give you space because at the same time, like you said, you're paid to be an expert and you're paid to do it. You're not necessarily an employee under them. And if some people can't get that, then I don't necessarily want to work with them. But to go back to what you're saying, I think the biggest thing with that is making sure that you are able to have that base of clients in the first place that are paying you well enough so that one client doesn't make or break you. And the other thing with that is really just being comfortable doing so. Like if from what I've seen, I used to offer like lead generation, so cold email, like booking appointments business to business for
Mm-hmm.
companies. That's an industry where some offers, you think an offer is really, really well received by a market and that it's super easy to get appointments for. Obviously, there's other tactics, there's other things you can do to get appointments besides just what the business is offering, but the offer is the biggest thing. I've had businesses come on where I think, oh, this is a no brainer. This is going to be super obvious for us to sell. And it just doesn't work out like that. And the results are less than anticipated. if I have to drop someone, I want to make sure that their time was not wasted. So that generally just means transferring the resources, transferring everything to them. If they want to keep pursuing it on their own, great. I like using I like using well, I subscribe to Alex Hermazi. I follow him very heavily in business. I do love the idea of having an irresistible offer. And if you can't meet that offer, then refund the client or work with them until you can get it. Because from the perspective of you can double your prices if you can up your prices 50%, as long as your churn rate does not increase at that exact same rate, then you're making more money. So as long as it responds well within the market, that's my market positioning. And I want to make sure that my clients know I will work my hardest to deliver on that result. If we do not get the result and there's no physical way to get the result, then it is my fault and I will reimburse you for wasting your time.
Yeah, that's fair. There's kind of a balance of who was at fault here, or why didn't it work, and if it was like I didn't deliver, then yeah, refund my work, or 50% refund or whatever, or just making it right in some way makes a lot of sense. I want to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about kind of cold outreach, cold calling, cold emailing, because that's something that you have experience with, and have done either now or doing in the past. Because I think talking from as a creative entrepreneur, especially in real estate, getting clients is a lot of just cold calling and like offering free shoots or offering a discounted shoot, or just trying to get a meeting so you can showcase your work and your services and getting your work in front of agents. So just in general, kind of what are some of the tips and ideas you have around cold email, cold calling that have worked? Because I feel like nobody likes it. Nobody really enjoys cold calling, but if you can do it right, it can help you land your first few clients.
Yeah, outside of making sure that you have a very unique value proposition and basically a risk-free offer, or at least an offer that differentiates yourself positively and doesn't make you appear like everyone else, I would analyze and I would look at, well, the first step I would do is I would look at what channels are my clients on and what is the saturation of that in general. Like when you're starting out, you want to become basically the biggest possible fish in relation to the pond. So, for instance, that could be Facebook, that could be LinkedIn, that could be Instagram, that could be email, that could be calling. I have in our CRM, I have seen that I've emailed people and then someone on our team has reached out to them on socials and they reply on socials rather than on email. That's just showing that, okay, they were most responsive over there. And I find that if the crowd is going one way, if you can go another way in terms of a channel, message, strategy, or anything, stand out positively, it's going to make a difference. Like for you, if you do this podcast to get realtors to sign up for your services, you interview them on the podcast and they express interest in working with you in a more permanent basis or referring you to people in their network. I've seen that work really well as well. In fact, one strategy I used relatively on in my journey that helped out a ton, I would do various features. I would highlight various people for free to try and get into their network and basically build out a relationship with them. Obviously, it doesn't hurt that I'm able to say that I've helped a few prominent brands and a few prominent people in their respective industries, but getting to that point where you're able to get someone on one, you do have to offer something of value that they see as value. That can be your service. Like, let's say for you, for instance, that could be photography. That could be, for instance, a podcast episode, right? Having them appear on a podcast. I would just look at the numbers. What are the odds that they reply to your message? What are the odds they get on in the first place? What are the odds they convert to that next step in your client acquisition process? Like if 90% of people you speak to come on the pod, but 5% convert into a client, is it really worth it if you have a better performing metric? Not really, not to start with. So that's what I would look at in terms of an analysis. But if you want to do like normal old fashioned cold call and cold email, we still do that very prominently in our agency. The one thing I would do is make your message as short as possible. Personalization, I'd kind of take it or leave it. It has to be very dialed in, very relevant, or just skip it and keep it as concise as possible. Go for the yes in the email or go for the no and book the meeting once you get interest. And then from the meeting, have your marketing do the talking before the call in terms of your brand, in terms of your reputation, case studies, everything like that. Put it in their face, make sure they view it. And then from there, figure out if they can actually work with your business. I would analyze what you actually need to know if they can work with you or if you need to turn them away. Ask them that, push them to turning away at any sign possible because you'd rather go for the yes than the no. And if they make it through, you extend them an offer. Hopefully, you close them, and you go away from there.
Yeah, there's a lot there. You mentioned one thing that I caught on was, in you talked about an irresistible offer. Just in general, your offer is really important, and I think if you have something I've talked about on other podcasts, free work is a big thing in the creative space of like how much free work do you do, how much work do you give away to kind of get a client. And one thing I've always said is if it's really low lift for you, you're okay giving it for free. Like for me, drone photography. I recently just added drone photography back into my standard offering for photography because it's really low lift for me. I enjoy flying my drone, and it's a great thing it's great for the houses I sell. So it's added in back to my standard package. And if I was, reaching out to somebody cold, and I would be like, hey, I'll offer you a free drone shoot of your property. Or if I wanted to get into the auction business, I might say like, hey, you have 100 acres of land that you're auctioning off. I'll do a free drone video of that land. Because drone is very low lift for me. It's very easy to do. It's not, well, easy is not the right word. It's not a ton of work because you're basically you're flying a drone. You're, as opposed to, walking around a property with a camera, getting shots and doing this kind of stuff, the drone is in the air and you can move it pretty quickly. So things like that are very low lift and an easy offer for me to extend, as opposed to, hey, I'll do a video for your property. That's a lot more work for me. It's a lot more potential money that I might lose out on if I offer that for free. So in that sense, it's not, a great offer. So if you have a product, let's say social media posts, like I'll do 5 free posts for you or something like that. If they're really low lift, it's a lot easier to offer that because you're not going to lose out on as much money. You're showcasing your work and you're getting in to their business a little bit. You can showcase your work that way, and then it's an easier way to make a longer term offer in that after that.
Yeah, it's from the same perspective of going back to what does the market want. I can share 2 examples here. The first one, I saw this recently. I have not tested for myself. I just saw it online. Like, hey, we can give you 5, 10 short form posts that you can post on your Instagram. That's not the greatest positioning when you compare it to something like, hey, we can put your face and your brand in front of thousands of your ideal clients every month and have them grow in trust and convert into clients. That sounds way better on paper. The other one as well, one of my friends, he has a sales related offer where he helps businesses get their offer into something that is ready to go into cold outreach, and then building out the processes and then building out the team members to manage it for them. One thing that he saw of his messaging is he was positioning himself like a cold email lead agency to the people he was reaching out to. They've been pitched that service so much and the exact same end result so many times it doesn't work. They don't care. It just doesn't. It flat out doesn't work. He was saying something like, "Hey, we can help you book 20 meetings for your ideal clients. Hands off, no work on your end, no ads, no appointment setters, no nothing, whatever it was." What works for him, because his unique mechanism is he places the team members as well, is we would just do something like, hey, are you looking to place commission only appointment setters, right? And that works. The only caveat that he ran into was he wanted to find people who, well, if you're placing commission only, people think, oh, commission only, I don't have to pay them unless I get results. That can mean the business may be a bit new and they may not actually have the foundations needed to get results in terms of getting the appointments in the first place. So it may be very hard for an appointment setter to get those results. So we wanted to reach out to established businesses. So we just put in something like, hey, we help businesses doing above 20K per month generate place commission only setters. Is that something you're looking to do? And that works really well because that gives us the point of, well, you have the irresistible offer, commission only appointment setters, risk free basically, and you're able to bring it out to the best performing businesses. And the other thing to note is that he would, in his sales process, what he does now is he figures out, okay, are these businesses ready to place appointment setters? Yes, we place them. We charge for them. If not, it would be, okay, we'll help get you to that point. So we'll build out your lead systems, hiring everything so you can get to that point. Then we'll place it. So a bit more comprehensive. And those are very in-depth examples of how you can change your messaging to get different results and what you can test and what you can trial to actually deliver the outcome you're looking for.
Yeah, and you're also in that instance, vetting potential clients as well, because if they're doing, like you said, to over 20K a month, they're already pretty established, they're already pretty successful, and so there's a lower risk of it not working out because they are maybe a new business that doesn't have a lot of success. If they're doing 20K a month, they have a little more success. They know what they're doing. Their product is pretty good at that point because they're doing pretty good revenue. I want to close out the podcast just kind of talking about. I completely just forgot what I was going to say, but anyway, I'll cut all this out. But I'm just going to restart that.
Yeah, you can cut it out.
Yeah.
There's one point I was talking for a little bit and I completely forgot your question. I'm like, oh shit, what's happening?
No, yeah, you're good.
Zoning out.
What was I going to say?
Mid combo. Yeah, keep going.
Anyway, I'll probably just close out the podcast because I completely forgot what I was going to say. It was a great question. I just completely forgot it. Anyway.
Oh shit.
Yeah, you're good. All right. So Carson, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Kind of closing out here, I wanted to ask about kind of growth in the future for you. So what kind of types of things are you looking to do to grow your business in 2023? Or are you even looking to grow? Or are you at a good spot now? Kind of what does your plans for 2023 look like?
So in terms of our business, 2022, I would say we cracked product market fit. We cracked our sales cycle. The one thing that we kind of neglected in 2022 was the overall client experience. And I catched onto this way late due to data. But since we spent a lot of time making sure our current clients were happy, they were going to stay with us or for their friends, get great results, that's basically what we wanted to do. We're going back into that process of building out these systems, building out the processes to delegate my role within getting new clients, delegate my role within fulfilling on new clients as much as needed. Obviously, I think as the business owner, to an extent, you do need to be involved in the day to day. But freeing myself up from a lot of things while also scaling out in terms of revenue. I do know our numbers. I do know what it takes to acquire one client each and every time consistently. It's not a lot in terms of cost or in terms of effort and time. But so making sure that we can get clients to onboard, well, basically sign quicker is our main goal. And then making sure that things don't break at scale. Because the one thing I always think it's good to talk about things when you mess up in your business. I almost blew up my business by taking on too many clients. I had to put on a wait list of about 5 people because I knew for a fact if all I had to do was deliver for these clients for 10 hours a day or I was screwed over. So making sure that I grow the business sustainably, quickly, as high as possible, while making sure that I'm not overworking myself and that I'm building the proper foundations to actually do so. That's really what we're looking to do on our business this year.
Yeah, all great ideas. I think you talked about like taking on too many clients and overworking yourself is burnout is really, really hard to get over and go through. So, making a sustainable business, growing it sustainably is really important. Again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. If people wanted to reach out to you to learn more about you or your services or contact you, where would they find you online?
Yeah, so I can be found at Carson Spitzke. I am most active on Twitter and on LinkedIn. If you search Carson Spitzke on either, it will show up. Spitz Solutions, if you're interested in doing PR, there is a Calendly on our webpage. If you are coming from this podcast, just put a note that it's from the podcast. Either put on the name, just write down podcast on the title and we'll know that Noah sent you and we'll have a bit of a bonus in store for you. Basically just a free article or so. So if you want to grab that, go to SpitzSolutions.com, go on the Calendly, type in Noah for the sign up on the Calendly and we'll get you a free article and we'll see if you meet what we're looking for in terms of a higher tier service as well. But Noah, thank you for having me and make sure you follow the podcast as well.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, you said my words for me. Yeah. Make sure you, share the podcast, and subscribe as well. Again, thank you so much. I will have all the links for Carson's socials and his website in the description. But again, thank you for coming on the podcast and we will see you next time on the Rest of Us podcast. Take care. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Rest of Us podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please consider leaving a rating or review on the podcasting platform of your choice. It really helps me see that you are enjoying the episode and also helps other people see the podcast. Also, please consider giving a follow on social media. All the links will be in the show notes down below. Also, in the show notes, there is a link to the Rest of Us newsletter. This is a platform where I'll send out different takeaways from the episode, resources that were mentioned in the episode, and also notifications about new episodes. So make sure you click the link to subscribe there. So episodes are released weekly, and I will see you then on the next episode of the Rest of Us podcast.